So this is the brand new Suunto Run, a running focused watch that takes almost everything from Suunto's more expensive Suunto Race, but then drops the price down to $249 US and adds a bunch of other features as well, not seen on Suunto's higher end watches yet. Now I've been putting this watch through its paces over the last little while: trail running, road running, track running, outdoor cycling, outdoor swimming, indoor cycling, you name it, all to see how well this thing actually works in real life. Because given the price, it could be incredibly impressive if it's actually as good as it sounds. So let's just simply dive into it. So the very first thing to look at is the box. Here's the box. What's notable about this is two things. One, it comes with a new charger, this new Suunto charger for this new Suunto watch. Honestly, this charger is probably the worst thing about this watch. It is absolutely horrific. The magnets in this thing are super weak and it's hard to get it aligned. It just jiggles all over the place, so it's not awesome. The good news though is that's the end of the bad news when it comes to hardware. The good news though is it does come with two sized fabric straps, which I definitely appreciate. I have the large one on here right now, which is actually more than large enough for my wrist. I'll put my wrist size down below right there. And now this thing is super lightweight with that fabric strap, just 36 grams all in, and using 22mm standard watch straps, so you can swap it out for whatever else you want if you don't like the straps that came with it. One final note about versions: I mentioned the pricing earlier on, the $249, etc., and the other currencies you see on the screen right there. There's also a different model in China that has Alipay as well, so just keep that in mind. That is only available in mainland China though, and not available outside of mainland China. Now, with that said, let's get right into the newness. The first bit of newness here, probably the most notable one, is that you can now do music playback from the watch. This probably isn't too big of a surprise given Suunto and their parent company now do sell headphones, so it makes sense to be able to play music back from the watch. So this watch has 4 GB of storage inside of it, and you can load MP3 files onto it. There is no streaming music support though, so just keep that in mind. So no Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, etc. And that's not going to happen. Don't hold your breath for that. That ship sailed years ago for those companies, so you're going to have to make do with loading the MP3 files on here, which takes a long time. It is incredibly slow to get them on there. Once that's done though, you go ahead and you take your headphones. I just use the AirPod Pros and I paired them up to this, and then you play back the music. Now when it comes to the organization of those MP3 files, that's a little bit kind of wonky as well. Basically you use the Suunto app, this part's fine, to go ahead and create playlists with those songs, but it doesn't seem to respect any like folder structure or something like that. Like I dragged an entire album onto the watch and it just said, okay, here's a pile of all my music. So some minor quirks there. The next new feature kind of tied into that is there's now a voice feedback directly from the watch to your headphones without requiring the Suunto app at all, even if you don't load any music. So if you just want to hear, for example, your lap splits and stuff like that, you can do that. Move this thing out of the way. You can do that without having to go ahead and use the app involved. So just watch to headphones. Next up on the hardware front, on the back side, there's a new optical heart rate sensor there. You might remember a year ago with the Suunto Race S, Suunto finally revamped their optical heart rate sensor from hot dumpster fire to mildly okay. It's not awesome. This one, I'll get into the accuracy section a little later on this optical heart rate sensor. It's in that same ballpark of like, yeah, it's okay-ish, but it is not awesome. One of the things I do appreciate though is that despite being a $249 GPS watch, it does have multi-band or dual frequency GPS. I feel like I need to point that out because that's a pretty big deal. Kudos on Suunto on that one, and to give you a bit of a hint of that accuracy section, it's pretty darn good. So more on that a little bit later on. Now, one of the things that they do add with this new optical heart rate sensor is recovery metrics afterwards. So 3 minutes following your workout, or for the 3 minutes following your workout, it'll track your heart rate and kind of log that recovery period after your workout. You'll see that in the summary stats on your workout as well as in the app. However, let's get back to some more accuracy bits, which is the new running track mode. Now, some of you Suunto folks might be like, hey, there was a running track mode introduced earlier this year. And that's true. There was a sport profile for that, but it wasn't actually the outdoor running track mode we've seen in other companies. Other companies basically have a mode where it learns the running track, so that 400-meter oval that you run around, or typically 400-meter oval anyways. It learns that particular pattern and then goes ahead and gives you incredibly exact distance and pacing while on the track, like down to the meters. So the moment you cross any one of the different lines there, it'll be precisely the same on your watch. So Suunto has added that piece into their watches here. Now, the way this typically works, you want to go out and do a couple laps of calibration for that track, and then save that, and any future visits to that track will remember that track. So that's what I did here. In fact, you can see in those first 2 laps, it's good, but it's not like spot on perfect. So then I saved that, and then I started my actual track workout, and you can see the line for that oval is absolutely perfect every single time. Now, Is it perfectly aligned to the shape of the track? We'll get into the accuracy section because there's some interesting tidbits there. The way this works though is you need to go ahead and choose which lane of the track you're in. This is true of all of the watches out there today. You tell lane 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. because each lane of course has a different distance for that particular lane. And then once you tell it that lane, it'll snap everything to that. And in my testing, it was again spot on. Every single time I went past those lines, in my case usually 0 and 200 meters is where most of my sets started and ended. It was precisely the moment I crossed those lines. So kudos, good job there. Next up is a new marathon sport profile and marathon mode within that. So some of these things are taking various bits from previous Suunto apps, Suunto guide apps, if you will, and pulling them into native functionality. And this is one of those things now where if you're doing a marathon, this is also true of a half marathon or other distances that you can specify there in the marathon app, it'll tell you your estimated finish time until, well, the end of the race. Obviously, if you've done a marathon, you know that funky math happens, especially like mile 20 to 26 or, kilometer 30 to 40. Math gets a little funky there. So this helps to simplify that based on your current pacing. Speaking of things that are also probably helpful in a marathon is new hydration and nutrition alerts. You can specify these in the Suunto app. You can go ahead and basically say what you want the reminder time frame to be for hydration as well as nutrition separately, repeating and so on. You can do that all in the app, and then in the watch, it'll go ahead and remind you throughout that particular workout. Again, another item coming from the Sundto Plus apps, kind of being pulled back into the native functionality, which is pretty nice, except there's one big caveat we'll get to in just a second. First, so if you are finding this video interesting or useful, just simply watch it all the way through. That is the only thing the YouTube gods care about these days, and I really do appreciate it. Now, the next new feature they've added here is the ability to see. Now, the next new feature they've added here is a new metronome. This is both audible and vibration alerts, therefore confirming, by the way, or noting that this has both audible as well as vibration alerts on it. And so you can set whatever you want that metronome to be paced at. A lot of people use that for cadence pacing and whatnot, and now it's built into the watch. Now, after that, they've added a new training recovery widget, or kind of consolidated widget, if you will. All the pieces that you see here had been there in the past, but this new recovery widget there has a recovery score there, which basically consolidates in your HRV, your sleep, and your TSB, basically kind of your training stress balance there, into one cohesive score, and that score then fluctuates throughout the day. Another new feature they've added in is a breathe widget. Basically, you have a 1, 2, 3 minute timer. You can also do a custom timer if you want to as well, and go ahead and focus on breathing and relaxation. Again, a very common feature a lot of their competitors have, especially in the mainstream watches. In fact, one of the things you're probably noticing in these widgets, if you're familiar with Suunto watches, is that there's a bit of a slight tweaking of a lot of the UI design here. Not a huge amount of tweaking, but a slight tweaking. And the reason for that is that this watch is actually running an entirely different operating system, kind of underneath the covers. In fact, a lot of the hardware is different. Really, the only things about the same is actually the GPS chipset compared to the Suunto Race series. Otherwise, everything else internally is totally different. And that's resulted in kind of a couple things. Number one, you're seeing that slight UI redesign we saw there, but also the Sundto Plus App Store isn't available in this watch because it hasn't been redone from a code base standpoint to this watch. And at this point, Suunto hasn't decided whether or not they're going to do that because they haven't decided whether or not this new platform used on this watch here will be the same platform going forward for other future high-end watches. For example, a new Suunto Race 2 or whatever they want to call that, whenever they call that down the road. They haven't decided that yet. So as a result of that, there is no Sundto Plus apps on here. And, you know, for people just getting into things, that's probably not a huge deal. But if you're coming from other Suunto watches, that might be a bigger deal to you. So keep that in mind going forward. Now, one of the ways that Suunto's countered that is by pulling a lot of those features that were kind of their own Suunto apps into native features. And so as an example, some of those features they pulled in there is the Suunto Ghost Runner mode, the Challenge Mate, and a few others around goals. For example, they also have the duration, distance, calorie, ascent training goals. Those are all now separate profiles into each given sport mode. So they've pulled some of their most popular features into this, but some of them are still lacking. For example, they have structured workout support. So you can build your own structured workout. I did that for my track workout, like you see right there. That works great. I can pull that into the watch and in life is good. But you can't sync a Training Peaks workout from Training Peaks into the watch. You can, of course, sync that workout from the watch up to training peaks when you're complete. I did that as well, but you can't go the other way. So if you have coached workouts, this watch isn't going to do it for you because the Training Peaks app requires the Sundto Plus support, and there is not Sundto Plus support on this particular watch with no promises of it coming. It might come in a year or two, or it might never come to this watch, so just keep that in mind. Now is a good time to quickly run through the user interface. This is the watch face itself. You can go ahead and change it to 8 different watch faces. If you scroll down from there, you've got your widgets. You can customize up to 6 different pinned widgets in this, though the control panel oddly sticks at the top, which is kind of really frustrating for no particular reason to me, but it just is. Also, why are we limited to 6? You've got tons of different widgets you can stick in there. I'm just scrolling through them. I should be able to have more than 6 widgets. In any case, once you open up one of those widgets, you can see data just like pretty much every other watch company out there. You can scroll down, you can see that recovery one, your training volume, etc. Another nitpicky thing is the training volume one resets every Monday morning. So right now, here I'm filming this on a Monday, it's reset back to 0 training load. Obviously, my training load from Sunday didn't reset. I've hammered on this before. I'm going to keep on hammering it. It should be a 7-day trailing load. That's how most other companies do it, and I would love to see Suunto follow in that lead. In any case, when it comes to choosing a sport profile, you've actually got 2 different options. You can tap the upper right-hand button, which will load up the very last sport profile and settings that you had. So if it was a track workout yesterday, it'll load up not just that track as a running profile, but also the workout you had associated with it. Or you can tap that middle digital crown there, and at the very top, it loads up a dashboard. That'll be anything that's scheduled for today listed at the top, and then down below there, you have your most recent sport profiles, and then down below there, you've got all your sport profiles. I like this. This is a pretty well-designed little dashboard screen. Makes it really easy to find what you probably need right away. Once you choose one of the sport profiles, you can go down and change the goal if you want to duration, distance, calorie, ascent. You can also change all your settings in the Suunto app itself. This includes data pages, data fields, etc. This will allow you to go ahead and customize exactly all the different data fields and pages that you want to see. Below that, you can choose a navigation if you want to route on a given route. There is no offline maps on this, but there is ability to route a given route. So those can be pulled in from Strava, as you see right here. I created this route in Strava, synced it to the watch, and then just followed it breadcrumb style through the rest of my trail run. You will get alerts if you're off course, but otherwise you're just following a breadcrumb style trail. If you want offline maps, topographic maps like on the Suunto Race or Race S series, it's $100 more for those maps with the Suunto Race. Anyways, once all that's said and done, you just go ahead and tap to start your particular workout. You'll see your data pages as you've configured them. Here's a bunch of those data pages right now on some of my particular workouts over the last little while. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the accuracy things for both heart rate, GPS, as well as elevation. Starting off with a trail run right here, you can see the high-level GPS looks basically the same to the other watches. As I zoom in along this cliff edge right here, where there's cliffs and trees and stuff down to the water, it's spot on. Clearly, Suunto doing a good job with not only the multi-band or dual-frequency GPS, but also the antenna, which tends to be a very important part of that picture. If we look at another section right here where I'm underneath the cliff, effectively in a cave actually, it does a really good job there as well. No issues from the Suunto. And the same was true on my other runs as well, off in the trails. Likewise, also if I look at an outdoor ride, you can see this up in the mountains here, including these switchbacks. No problems, both at the ascending part as well as the high speed descents were also very, very good despite being, again, very, very fast switchbacks. Now remember earlier on we did that track run where I had it locked in the track run mode? While it did do a good job at tracking the distance spot on, you can see it's slightly offset. And the key with these different track run modes is, aside from Apple's, the other ones all basically detect the track and try to figure out the geometry of the track. And you may not know this, but all running tracks are not actually the same in terms of the exact geometry of that oval. Yes, they may be 400 meters, but they could be kind of a more squished oval or a wider oval, whatever the case is, they're all slightly different. So the trick for the different running modes is to detect correctly where that oval is. In this case, Suunto kind of misses that and its oval isn't quite correct. In fact, Garmin's also isn't quite correct, though very, very close. Actually, the first time I've seen them miss in all these years, in fact. Apple's is spot on, but Apple has a database of tracks. And so if your track is in the database, you're good. But if you're in a country where that track database doesn't exist or that track's not in the database, then you're sort of out of luck. And then the last GPS one I want to briefly look at is this open water swim here. Now, it did way better than the Apple Ultra Watch 2, but not as good as the reference track. So again, I continue to have kind of problems with Suunto and open water swimming where it's just not great. I would say if you swam once a year or something, this is probably fine. But if you're a frequent open water swimming, you probably find this track a bit disappointing in terms of accuracy. Now, when it comes to elevation, here's one route I did a couple hours up into the mountains and back. You can see it's spot on with all the other barometric altimeters. Again, this unit does have a barometric altimeter in it, as well as a compass, in fact, for that navigation. No problems there on any of my other routes as well. So then let's look at the heart rate side of things, starting off with this trail run. You can see no problems on this, despite a lot of ups and downs in the terrain. So both fast sections and kind of painfully slow sections going up, it was spot on across the board. It's a good job there. Then we look at that track interval run here. This is 4x800 and then 6x400. And you can see this is the one where it is the outlier of all these units compared to the Apple Watch Ultra 2, compared to a chest strap, compared to the Whoop 4, the Whoop 5. It's occasionally just a bit offset, which again is sort of the optical heart rate sensor they've chosen here isn't the best one. It's mostly acceptable, as you can see, but also misses the boat here and there. And we see the same thing even on an indoor trainer workout right there, where it was mostly good. These are relatively steady state, I think 5-6 minute intervals, and it's still kind of missing the mark here and there, just these dropouts and spikes and whatnot that, again, not an amazing optical heart rate sensor, but also not horrible. And then meanwhile, for an outdoor ride, you see the first half is all relatively good. That's going uphill, so relatively steady state, no vibrations from the road because you're going relatively slow. But as you go down the second half with a bunch of descents and kind of ups and downs, short little sprints and stuff, it pretty much falls apart entirely. And that's not super unusual for optical heart rate sensors, but it's definitely not ideal here at all. And ultimately, my other runs and rides are all relatively similar from running standpoint. If it's mostly steady state, it's mostly fine. And when you get more intervals, it starts to fall apart a little bit more. So then let's kind of wrap things up and talk about where we are. Now, for $249, this is a really good deal. I think largely because of the fact that you have the entire Suunto ecosystem behind it. Well, you don't have the Sundto Plus apps and all that integration connectivity. You do have the Suunto app itself, which does have a lot of the navigation features in terms of designing those routes and whatnot, as well as the training for structured workouts. And of course, syncing this outbound to a bunch of different platforms. And then on the watch itself, you do have the recovery, the training load metrics, all the sport profiles that are there, and then of course the dual frequency and multi-band GPS found at this price point, which is something that is relatively unusual. In fact, it's incredibly unusual actually to find it at this price point. It's awesome to see Suunto put it in here, and for at least land-based activities to be quite good. So overall, if you're a runner that isn't necessarily too fussed with having offline maps or the Suunto Plus apps, this seems like a really strong deal to look at. Now, with that said, we've got a pretty busy week ahead, so definitely hit subscribe at the bottom there for plenty more sports technology goodness. Or if you found this video interesting, just simply hit the like button as well. It really does help out quite a bit. Have a good one.